The celestial bazaar hummed with activity, as thousands of alien species wandered between stalls and trading posts. The air shimmered with exotic scents and the mingling of countless languages. Towering above the common merchants stood the gladiatorial arena, a massive structure of obsidian and silver that seemed to pulse with energy. Elvira Drazeth, Queen of the Astral Dominion, watched from her royal viewing box. Her skin gleamed like polished emerald in the light of 3 suns, while her eyes reflected the cold emptiness of deep space. Around her neck coiled Vex, her companion, a dragon, the size of a small horse with scales that shifted between midnight blue and cosmic purple. Vex was no mere pet, but a sentient being bonded to the Queen since her ascension ceremony 2 centuries ago. The Queen sat motionless as alien diplomats and nobles vied for her attention. She had not come for politics. She had come to find a weapon. The Void Horde approached her borders, growing stronger with each planetary system they consumed. Her generals promised victory, but Elvira knew better. The ancient enemy had returned, and conventional warfare would not stop them. On her shoulder, Vex stirred his tail, flicking with sudden interest. The dragon had been experiencing visions, troubling dreams of stars going dark and a figure bathed in strange light standing against the darkness. Elvira felt his agitation through their psychic bond. The announcer bellowed, introducing the next fighter. A human female from a distant outpost world called Earth. Humans were rare in this sector of space, their world only recently discovered and quickly subjugated by the Nexus Imperium. Most ended up as servants or curiosities. Fewer still became gladiators. The human woman called Laurel stepped into the arena. Her body bore the scars of previous fights, but she moved with fluid grace, unexpected in a species considered primitive by galactic standards. She wore minimal armor, her arms and legs mostly exposed, revealing lean muscle and tattoos that spiraled across her skin. Her hair, cut short, clung to her skull in tight copper curls. The crowd jeered and placed bets. Humans rarely survived their first match. This one had somehow managed 3 victories, already defying expectations. The arena master announced her opponent, a Gralic warrior twice her size with chitinous armor and razor appendages. Elvira leaned forward slightly, the movement so subtle only Vex noticed. The match began without ceremony. The Gralic charged with surprising speed, but Laurel was faster. She dodged, rolled, and came up behind the creature, striking at junctures in its natural armor where nerves clustered. The crowd roared in surprise as the massive alien stumbled. Vex made a soft, trilling sound, his eyes never leaving the human. The dragon saw something the others missed. The way she moved, the pattern of her attacks. This was no untrained slave. This was a warrior with purpose. Laurel danced around her opponent, analyzing weaknesses, exploiting openings. The Gralic grew frustrated, its attacks becoming wilder. Laurel seized her moment, delivering a precise strike to a nerve cluster that paralyzed half its body. The arena fell silent. No human had ever defeated a Gralic in open combat. Elvira raised a single finger, summoning her advisor. Mira, she spoke in the musical language of the Sylvan elites. I wish to acquire this specimen. Mira blinked, her luminous eyes widening. My queen, surely there are more suitable champions among the known warrior races. Humans are unpredictable, unstable. Their biology makes them susceptible to emotions that cloud judgment. Elvira watched as Laurel stood over her fallen opponent without delivering a killing blow. Another oddity, the arena demanded blood, yet the human showed restraint. The prophecy speaks of an otherworlder, Elvira said. My dreams show a figure standing against the darkness. This human fights differently, observes, calculates. Her restraint suggests intelligence beyond what we assumed of her kind. Vex hummed in agreement, his scales rippling with excitement. The next match began immediately. No rest for Gladiator favorites. The crowd wanted blood. 2 new opponents entered the ring, Zarizian twins with telepathic abilities that made them deadly opponents. Laurel faced them with the same calculating calmness. The twins circled, using their mental link to coordinate attacks from multiple angles. Laurel closed her eyes briefly, seeming to surrender. Mira made a dismissive sound. See, my queen. Human weakness. But Elvira understood the human was adapting, using a technique to disrupt the telepathic advantage. By limiting her own visual input, She forced the twins to rely on physical, rather than mental coordination. The fight became a blur of movement. Laurel taking hits but delivering more powerful blows, breaking the rhythm of the twins until they fell into disarray. Within minutes, both lay unconscious. The crowd erupted, some cheering, others howling in outrage as betting. Pools collapsed, the human stands victorious again. Elvira said, "I will have her. Arrange the transfer immediately." Mira hesitated. "My queen, the human may carry diseases. Our medical protocols, I care not for protocols." Elvira cut her off. "The void approaches. We need solutions beyond our understanding. The ancient texts speak of chaotic energies that once countered the void. This human demonstrates such chaos. Make it happen later," as royal guards escorted a confused and suspicious Laurel to the queens. Shuttle Elvira studied her new acquisition. The human stood proud despite her exhaustion, her green eyes taking in everything, calculating escape routes, assessing threats. Like a trained operative, not a simple gladiator. "Welcome to your new life. Human," Elvira said. "You have been purchased for a greater purpose." Laurel looked directly at the queen, an act that would earn most beings immediate execution. The human showed no fear, only wariness and something else. Curiosity. Vex slithered down from Elvira's shoulder, approaching the human guards, tensed weapons ready, but Elvira raised a hand, stopping them. The dragon circled Laurel, sniffing the air around her. Then, unexpectedly, Vex bowed his head before the human. Elvira smiled for the first time in decades. The prophecy begins. The crystalline palace of Queen Elvira Drazith towered above the capital city of Silvara, like a mountain of light, catching and fracturing the rays of the three suns into 1,000 colors. Laurel stood at the window of her new chambers, staring out at the alien landscape with mixed emotions. Freedom from the fighting pits was something she had dreamed about for 3 years since her capture by alien slavers. Yet this was not freedom. This was a different kind of cage, one with jeweled walls and silk sheets, but a cage nonetheless. The door slid open without warning. Laurel spun into a defensive stance, only to find Vex, the queen's dragon companion, slithering into her room. The creature moved with surprising grace, for its size scales shifting. Colors as it approached her. Laurel relaxed slightly but remained alert. The dragon had shown unusual interest in her since her arrival, creating an odd bond that seemed to irritate the queen's advisors. Vex circled her, once, then settled on the floor, its intelligent eyes studying her. "You are very strange for a royal pet," Laurel said, knowing the creature understood even if it could not speak. "Human languages." Vex made a sound like chiming bells, which Laurel interpreted as laughter. The door opened, again revealing Queen Elvira herself, dressed in battle armor rather than royal robes. The queen dismissed her guards with a gesture, leaving her alone with the human and the dragon. "Your training begins today," human Elvira announced. "Your combat skills are impressive but primitive. You must learn our ways if you are to serve your purpose." Laurel frowned. "I have a name, Your Majesty." "It's Laurel. And I still don't understand what purpose you have in mind for me." The queen tilted her head, studying the human, with those ancient eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. "I know your name. Laurel of Earth. I simply had not decided if you would live long enough to make using it worthwhile." Vex made another chiming sound, this one directed at the Queen. Elvira smiled slightly. "Yes, I suppose you're right," she said to the dragon, then turned back to Laurel. "The void. Horde approaches our borders. They consume all in their path, assimilating worlds and species into their collective conventional weapons, fail against them as they adapt and evolve. But ancient texts speak of energies that once repelled them. Chaotic, unpredictable forces, human forces." Laurel guessed, seeing the connection. "Precisely," the queen confirmed. "Humans possess an internal energy unlike any species we've encountered. Your minds work differently. Your unpredictability, your adaptability, your capacity for both extreme violence and extreme compassion. These qualities make you unique in the galaxy and potentially valuable against the void." Over the following weeks, Laurel trained relentlessly with Elvira and her elite guards. The queen personally taught her the basics of elven combat magic, while Laurel introduced human martial arts techniques that the elves found bewildering but effective. The grudging respect between teacher and student grew slowly. Like a stubborn plant in rocky soil, Vex accompanied Laurel everywhere, becoming her constant companion. When not training, she explored the palace with the dragon at her side one evening. They discovered an ancient gallery deep within the lower levels. Dust-covered murals stretched across curved walls depicting a great war fought millennia ago. Laurel brushed away centuries of dust, revealing images that shocked her. Humans and elves, fighting side by side against a darkness that devoured stars. The murals told a story of alliance, sacrifice, and then something else. Something that had been deliberately damaged. Someone wants this history forgotten. She whispered to Vex, the dragon, rumbled in agreement, its scales darkening with what seemed like concern. Why would the queen hide this from me? Laurel asked. Vex shook his head, communicating that perhaps Elvira didn't know either. Their discovery remained secret, but changed something. In Laurel, she began to observe the court more carefully, noting the factions and tensions among the elven nobles. Many resented her presence, especially Admiral Starheart and Lady Willow, who whispered poison whenever the queen was absent. One night, during a royal banquet celebrating the summer solstice, Laurel noticed a servant behaving strangely. The elf moved too precisely, his eyes too focused, while serving wine to the queen. Something triggered Laurel's arena instincts. The subtle shift of, wait, the careful positioning. Without thinking, Laurel lunged across the table, knocking the goblet from Elvira's hand, just as she raised it to her lips. The wine splashed across the white tablecloth, eating through the fabric like acid guards seized. The servant, who fought with unnatural strength, breaking the arm of one guard before Laurel tackled him to the ground. The servant's skin began to ripple, revealing patches of oily blackness beneath. Void corruption, Elvira announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. Kill it before it transforms. Laurel acted instinctively, grabbing a ceremonial dagger and striking at the point where the creature's neck met its skull. The being shrieked, then collapsed into a puddle of black ichor. The banquet hall erupted into panic as nobles fled screaming. Only Elvira remained seated, watching Laurel with new interest as guards secured the room. "You have saved my life, human," the queen said later in her private chambers. "How did you know?" "I didn't exactly," Laurel admitted. "Something felt wrong. I spent years in the arena learning to spot threats before they appear." "It's instinct," Elvira nodded. "The void has infiltrated my court. This changes everything. The Tournament of Ascension approaches in 1 month. My military leadership will be determined through combat. I had planned to enter my champion Nightshade. Now you wish me to fight?" Laurel finished, understanding immediately. The queen smiled, a rare expression that transformed her face. "No. I wish you to win and, in doing so, expose which of my nobles have been corrupted." Vex trilled, excitedly circling them both. Laurel felt a strange sensation in her chest. Not fear, not exactly, but a sense of destiny unfolding. "What happens if I refuse?" The queen looked at her. With those ancient eyes, all life in this sector will end, including whatever remains of humanity. The void consumes everything. It cannot be stopped, only fought, and for reasons I do not fully understand, you may be our best hope. That night Vex stayed. In Laurel's chamber, curled at the foot of her bed, the dragon seemed troubled, waking Laurel with soft whimpers. She stroked his scales until he calmed. "We're both pawns in a game we don't understand, aren't we?" she whispered to the dragon. Vex looked at her with eyes full of starlight, and somehow Laurel knew they were far more than pawns. They were the beginning of something new, something neither human nor elf had anticipated. The announcement echoed through the crystalline spires of Silvara like thunder. The Tournament of Ascension would begin in 3 days. Held once every century, the competition determined the military hierarchy for the coming war campaign. Winning meant command of the Sylvan Armada. Losing often meant death. Elvira stood before her royal council, her expression unreadable as protests erupted around her. "My queen," Admiral Starheart said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Entering a human as your champion insults centuries of tradition. The tournament is sacred to our people." Laurel watched from the side of the chamber, Vex coiled protectively around her feet. The dragon had rarely left her side since the assassination attempt. Traditions. Change when survival demands it. Elvira replied, "The human saved my life when none of you detected the threat. She has proven her worth through actions, not bloodlines." Lady Willow sneered, her perfect features twisting. "Her species barely discovered. Space travel a century ago. They are primitives, emotional and unpredictable. Perhaps unpredictability is exactly what we need against an enemy that adapts to patterns," Elvira countered. Her tone ended all discussion. The council departed their whispers, following them like shadows. Later in the royal gardens, Elvira explained the tournament to Laurel. 16 champions would compete in combat trials. The rules were simple: victory by surrender or incapacitation. Death was permitted but unnecessary. Weapons were allowed but no ranged technology. The winner would be named High Commander of the Sylvan Forces. "You face more than just physical challenges," Elvira warned as they walked beneath trees with luminescent leaves. "The noble houses will seek to eliminate you before you reach the arena. Assassination is considered an acceptable strategy." Laurel frowned. "Why enter me at all if the odds are so heavily stacked against humans?" Vex made a soft, trilling sound that made Elvira pause. "Because the dragon has seen something in you," Elvira admitted. "Something I cannot ignore. The void grows stronger with each passing day. Even now, my scouts report entire systems gone dark. If there is even a small chance the ancient texts are correct about human potential, I must pursue it. The first assassination attempt came that night. Poison in the air circulation system." Laurel woke to Vex clawing frantically at the floor panels, revealing an emergency tunnel. They barely escaped as toxic gas filled her chambers. The second attempt came during her morning meal. A servant with a blade, Laurel dispatched him, easily recognizing the glazed look of mind control rather than void corruption. The third attempt was more subtle. A courtier named Meadow approached, offering alliance and friendship. Her words seemed genuine, but Vex growled low and threatening. Laurel trusted the dragon's instincts and declined. Later, they discovered Meadow had connections to 3 other champions. The tournament began with traditional ceremonies. 16 champions entered the great arena, each representing noble houses or military branches. Laurel stood out starkly human among elvish perfection. The crowd jeered and whispered, betting heavily against her survival. Past the first round, her first opponent was Dusk, a celebrated duelist from the southern provinces. He approached with confidence, his silver armor gleaming in the 3 suns. "Your queen dishonors us by sending you to die, human," he said as they circled each other. Laurel said nothing, conserving energy, studying his movements. She had learned much about elvish fighting styles. Their movements followed mathematical patterns, beautiful but predictable. When Dusk attacked, it was with blinding speed, his blade a blur of light. The crowd gasped, expecting quick execution, but Laurel was no longer where his blade struck. She moved unpredictably, breaking rhythm deliberately, introducing chaos into her patterns. After 5 minutes of combat, Dusk grew frustrated. His attacks became aggressive, leaving openings. Laurel exploited one, landing a stunning blow to his chest. He fell unconscious before realizing what had happened. The arena fell silent in shock. In her private chambers that evening, Elvira visited, bringing ancient texts and battle maps. They spent hours discussing strategy. Their conversations had evolved from master and servant to something approaching equals. "Why did your dragon choose me?" Laurel asked, finally voicing the question that had haunted her. Elvira hesitated, then spoke. "My people enslaved dragons millennia ago, used them as weapons. My ancestors, the Drazith bloodline, freed them, forged a bond of partnership rather than ownership. Vex has abilities beyond my understanding. He sees potential futures, like threads of light, some bright, some dark. He saw you long before you arrived." Laurel absorbed this revelation. The tournament continued over the following days. She defeated 3 more champions, each victory more decisive than the last. The crowd began chanting her name, first in mockery, then in genuine excitement. The common elves, particularly the lower castes, admired her as an underdog. The semi-final match brought her against Lady Willow's champion, a towering elf named Eclipse, who fought with twin blades. The battle lasted nearly an hour. Both fighters bloodied and exhausted in the end. Laurel's human endurance proved decisive. She outlasted the elf, winning by submission. Only one opponent remained: Nightshade, the undefeated champion. Of Admiral Starheart, winner of 3 previous tournaments, Nightshade had never lost a match in 400 years. The night before the final, Laurel found Vex agitated, pacing her chambers, his scales shifting between midnight black and alarming. "Red, what's wrong?" she asked. The dragon led her through hidden passages to an ancient library. There, on dusty shelves, they discovered records of the last Void incursion, images of infected beings with oily black veins and strange growths. Their movements, erratic yet coordinated by some hive intelligence. Laurel recognized the symptoms. She had seen them before in her final opponent. The next morning, the final match began with full ceremony. Admiral Starheart watched from a position of honor beside the Queen, his face confident. Nightshade entered the arena to thunderous applause. His perfect features and graceful movements embodied elvish ideals, but Laurel saw what others missed: the subtle wrongness, the too perfect symmetry of his movements, the darkness lurking beneath his skin. Their combat began cautiously, each testing the other's defenses. Nightshade fought brilliantly, but without creativity. Without the spark of true life, Laurel realized with growing horror that he was not partially corrupted. He was completely controlled, a puppet of the Void. She changed tactics, abandoning defense for reckless attacks, the kind no sane fighter would attempt. The unpredictability confused Nightshade. His responses became mechanical. Laurel pressed her advantage. When she landed a critical blow to his shoulder, Nightshade stumbled. Black ichor, not red blood, seeped from the wound. Elvira rose to her feet. The Queen had seen it too. Nightshade abandoned pretense, his skin split, revealing the corruption. Beneath, the crowd erupted in panic as guards rushed forward. In the chaos, Admiral Starheart fled, but Laurel's eyes tracked him. She had found the source of corruption. It reached the highest levels of Sylvan society. The tournament of ascension ended, not with a champion, but with a revelation: the Void was already among them. News of the tournament spread across Silvara like wildfire. A human defeating elvish champions. The revelation of Void corruption within the noble ranks. The common elves, particularly the service castes, celebrated Laurel as a hero. Songs spread through lower markets telling of the human warrior who exposed corruption in high places. The aristocracy had different reactions. Doors closed when Laurel approached. Conversation stopped. Guards watched her with hands on weapons. Elvira increased palace security. But tension filled the crystal halls like poison. 1 week after the tournament, Queen Elvira collapsed during court. Her skin turned ashen, her breathing shallow. Royal healers rushed to her side but seemed unable to identify the cause. Laurel watched from the doorway of the Queen's chambers as healers applied glowing crystals and chanted ancient words with little effect. Vex paced frantically around the Queen's bed, scales shifting between worried purple and angry red. The dragon kept returning, to nudge Elvira's hand with his head, making soft, distressed sounds. Court Mage Diana approached Laurel, her eyes grave. "We have detected traces of Shadowbane in her system, a slow poison that mimics natural illness. It would have gone unnoticed except for the dragon. He sensed something wrong. Who did this?" Laurel asked. Diana shook her head. "The poison is administered over time in small doses. Someone close to her, someone she trusts." Vex growled, low and dangerous. The mage continued. "Her condition will worsen. If we don't identify the poison source and find an antidote, she will slip into eternal sleep within days. The court will declare emergency powers. Admiral Moonshadow, as senior military leader, will assume control." Laurel felt cold. Moonshadow had been Starheart's closest ally before the Admiral fled. He had distanced himself publicly after the tournament, calling for investigation. But Laurel mistrusted his convenient outrage. Without access to court records, Laurel turned to what she knew best from the fighting pits: observation. She recruited kitchen staff and servants from the lower castes who admired her victory. People invisible to the nobility who saw everything. For 3 days, she gathered information, learning who visited the Queen's private chambers, who handled her food, her medicines. Meanwhile, Diana stayed with Elvira, monitoring her condition. The Queen drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes recognizing Laurel, sometimes lost in fever dreams. Vex rarely left Laurel's side, becoming her eyes and ears in places she could not go. The dragon slipped through hidden passages, following suspicious courtiers, reporting back through their strange, wordless communication. On the fourth day, the pattern emerged. Private meetings between Admiral Moonshadow and the royal cupbearer, unusual shipments arriving at night. Guards reassigned from key positions, palace security protocols subtly altered. Laurel tested her theory using a technique from Earth invisible powder applied to items in the Queen's personal quarters. The next day she checked visitors' hands under special light, revealing traces on Admiral Moonshadow, confirming he had searched the Queen's rooms when supposedly visiting her for military consultation. The evidence was clear, but proof would be difficult. Traditional Elvish courts required witnesses of equal rank, which Laurel did not have. That night, a servant brought Laurel an urgent message from Diana. The Queen's condition had worsened. She rushed to the royal chambers, finding the court mage applying emergency treatments. "The poison accelerates," Diana whispered. "We need to act now. I found ancient texts about Shadowbane. The antidote requires the blood of the poisoner. If we wait until morning, she will be beyond healing." Laurel nodded. "We need to confront Moonshadow tonight." Her hand went to the ceremonial dagger Elvira had given her after the tournament. A sound at the door made them both turn. Vex slithered in scales dark with agitation. The dragon projected urgent images into Laurel's mind, warships moving into position around the planet. Communications being rerouted. Palace security systems disabled. It's happening now. Laurel realized Moonshadow is making his move. She left Diana with the Queen and followed Vex through hidden passages. The dragon led her to an observation deck overlooking the capital. The night sky, normally brilliant with stars, now held something else. Dark shapes eclipsing the constellations. Ships, hundreds of them. Not sylvan design, but something organic. Void ships, a voice behind her spoke. Admiral Moonshadow stepped from shadows, his perfect face calm. The beginning of the end, human. Or perhaps just a new beginning. Laurel turned, keeping her face neutral. "Even as her muscles tensed, you betrayed your people." Your Queen. Moonshadow smiled. "She is not my queen, not anymore." The void offers perfection, unity, purpose, the end of division and conflict. Your species cannot understand. You are too primitive, too chaotic. "But we will bring order to the galaxy." Vex snarled, lunging at the Admiral, but stopped mid-air, suspended by invisible force. Moonshadow held up his hand, revealing an ancient metal band inscribed with symbols. The dragon thrashed helplessly. "Binding device," the Admiral explained. "Used by my ancestors to control dragons before the Drazith rebellion. I discovered it in the ancient vaults. Such history forgotten by modern elves, but remembered by the void. The collective remembers everything." Guards entered the chamber surrounding Laurel. Their eyes had the same glazed quality she had seen in Nightshade, void corruption spreading through the ranks. "Surrender, human," Moonshadow commanded. "You have no chance against us. But the void values your unique biology. Your chaos might be studied, integrated." Laurel assessed her options. Fighting was suicide, running impossible. She needed a diversion. Her eyes met Vex. The dragon blinked once slowly, their silent communication developing over weeks, conveying a plan, shifting her weight. Laurel pretended to consider, then suddenly threw her dagger at Moonshadow. The Admiral deflected it easily with his binding band, but the momentary distraction allowed Vex to spit a concentrated acid ball at the ceiling. Alarms blared as protective wards activated in the chaos. Laurel grabbed Vex, escaping through maintenance tunnels as guards fired energy weapons behind them. They reached a junction. Vex pulled toward the hangar bays, wanting to disable the Admiral's ship, but Laurel hesitated. "The Queen," Laurel said. "We can't leave her." Vex projected urgent images of the void ship's weapons capable of destroying the palace. The Queen would die anyway if the invasion succeeded. The decision tore at Laurel. Save Elvira. or stop Moonshadow. She could not do both, the fate of billions against the life of one, even a queen she had grown to respect. A distant explosion rocked the palace. The first wave of bombardment had begun. Laurel made her choice. Laurel sprinted through burning corridors, smoke filling her lungs. Her decision made, she headed for the queen's chambers. A palace could be rebuilt, a world retaken, but the knowledge in Elvira's mind about void weaknesses was irreplaceable. Diana looked up in surprise as Laurel burst in. "We need to move now," Laurel said. "Void ships are bombarding the upper levels." The court mage hesitated. "The queen cannot be moved in this condition." Vex projected urgent images to both of them, showing ancient catacombs beneath the palace connected to forgotten tunnels leading away from the capital. "There is no time to argue." Laurel insisted, "We take her or we all die." Together they wrapped Elvira in healing cloths, Diana gathering vital medicines while Laurel lifted. The queen. Her body felt impossibly light, like hollow bones. Vex led them through hidden passages as the palace shook with explosions above. They descended through narrow stairs into darkness, Laurel carrying Elvira, while Diana held a glowing crystal, illuminating their path. Vex scouted ahead, ensuring their route remained clear. The ancient catacombs smelled of dust and forgotten magic. Carved symbols covered the walls, some recognizably, Sylvan, others in unknown scripts. Behind them, palace guards, loyal to Moonshadow, pursued, their boots echoing on stone. Some wore breathing apparatus protecting them from the smoke. Others showed signs of advanced void corruption, their movements jerky, unnatural. Deeper, they went until they reached a massive chamber. The air felt different here, ancient yet somehow clean. Vex led them to a central platform where crystal formations grew from floor to ceiling. Diana placed her light crystal in a receptacle, suddenly illuminating the entire space. It was not simply a catacomb. It was a command center. Ancient technology hummed to life, responding to Elvira's presence even in her unconscious state. Holographic displays activated, showing star maps, the positions of void ships, military installations. Elvira stirred in Laurel's arms, her eyes fluttering open. "My ancestors' emergency bunker," she whispered. "The last refuge in case of catastrophic attack." Diana immediately began treating the queen with renewed vigor, using the advanced medical equipment that had activated the queen's breathing, stabilized color returning to her face. Laurel explored the chamber, discovering sleeping quarters, storage filled with preserved food, and most importantly, communications equipment. She sent emergency signals to Sylvan outposts, warning of the void invasion and Moonshadow's betrayal. Over the following days, survivors found their way to the catacombs, guards who resisted corruption, civilians who escaped the bombardment, scholars who recognized ancient symbols, directing them to safety. They formed a resistance under Elvira's weakened but determined leadership. In the command center's archives, they discovered historical records, texts that had been purged from public knowledge. Laurel and Elvira studied them together as the queen regained strength. "These records tell a different history," Elvira said, her voice hollow with shock. "Humans were not primitive latecomers to galactic civilization. They were our equals, our allies." The ancient texts revealed startling truth. Humans had once been the greatest warriors in the galaxy, their unpredictable nature making them natural fighters against the void, which thrived on pattern and order. But fear grew among certain elvish factions. Fear of human unpredictability led to betrayal. Humans were systematically reduced, erased from galactic history. Their worlds isolated, their knowledge suppressed until they forgot the stars had ever been their home. More crucially, the texts explained why the void could not corrupt humans. Their internal chaos, their emotional complexity, their contradictory nature made assimilation impossible. The void required order to corrupt, but humanity thrived on disorder. Meanwhile, Vex became increasingly agitated, projecting images of Moonshadow using the binding device on other dragons. Dragons kept secret in stasis chambers beneath the capital, awakened and controlled as living weapons against the resistance. "We need to free Vex and the others," Laurel said. "They may be our only advantage." Elvira nodded. The binding devices have weaknesses. Known only to the Drazeth bloodline, I can create a disruptor, but someone must get close enough to use it. The dragons will recognize me, but Moonshadow will expect me to lead any attack. We'll go, Laurel volunteered. I know how to move unseen. The arena teaches such skills. With resistance fighters creating diversionary attacks, Laurel infiltrated the transformed palace, now a grotesque merger of Sylvan architecture and void organic matter. She wore scavenged guard armor covering her human features. She located the dragon chambers, finding Vex and 12 others, their scales dulled, their eyes clouded with control devices attached to their necks. Moonshadow stood before them, directing, their power to maintain shields around key installations. Laurel waited for her moment. When the Admiral turned to consult with Void commanders, she activated Elvira's disruptor, a crystal device emitting frequencies only dragons could hear. Vex responded, first his eyes clearing, recognition returning. He communicated silently with the others. When Moonshadow returned, he found his weapons in rebellion. Dragons turned on their controllers, breathing fire and acid. Laurel attacked the Admiral directly, targeting the ancient binding band. He fought with elvish precision, but Laurel fought with human unpredictability, landing a critical blow that shattered the device. Freed dragons joined resistance fighters across the capital, their combined assault, pushing back void forces. While Laurel led the dragons, Elvira confronted Moonshadow directly in the throne room. The Admiral sneered even in defeat. Your victory means nothing. The void is endless. It exists beyond time, beyond space. You cannot defeat entropy itself. The Queen stepped forward, millennia of royal authority in her bearing. You misunderstand, Admiral. We do not seek to defeat entropy. We seek to harness it. The chaos of creation balancing the order of dissolution. This was the ancient, way before fear divided us. The final battle raged for 3 days. Void ships fell from the skies. Dragons reclaimed the airways. Resistance fighters secured the ground. Without their corrupted leader, the enemy forces grew disorganized, vulnerable to the unpredictable tactics Laurel had taught in victory. Elvira stood before her people surrounded by freed dragons. Vex at her side. Laurel stood nearby, no longer a curiosity, but a respected commander. The Queen addressed the survivors. Today we remember what was forgotten. Humans and elves once stood together against the darkness. Fear divided us, weakening both. We believed order would save us, but only by embracing chaos can we truly defeat the void. She turned to Laurel. The prophecy was incomplete. It is not one human warrior who will save us, but humanity itself. Their chaos, their unpredictability, their capacity for both destruction and creation. I will journey to Earth to re-establish our ancient alliance. Vex trilled happily, his scales shimmering with anticipation. 1 month later, as their ship prepared for departure to Earth, Vex shared one final vision with Laurel and Elvira, a future where humans and elves stood as equals among the stars, not perfect, not ordered, but vibrant, alive, adaptable, their alliance forming a shield against the darkness that devoured stars. The human element was not a weakness, but the greatest strength against a universe of encroaching order. Elvira smiled at Laurel. No longer queen and gladiator, but partners in a new beginning. What do you think awaits us on your world? Laurel thought of Earth, its beauty, its flaws, its endless contradictions. Chaos, she said with a smile. Beautiful, glorious chaos.